Hey, everybody, welcome to Wellness Wednesday, a more difficult Wellness Wednesday than usual for a lot of people. Some people may not know that the bulk of my audience on this YouTube channel, even though I am Canadian, is Americans. So, and America has had yet another spate of mass shootings. So, I'm going to talk about what I said I was going to talk about last week. With a bit of an amendment in that these techniques are not just, kind of getting back into the world, getting on the horse, for lack of a better term, after COVID, but any kind of, traumatic, scary thing. The principles are the same, essentially. The details are slightly different. The broad strokes are not. So, again, my Canadian thoughts go out to people in the many communities, and I mean it's such an interconnected world now that just because you don't live in that city doesn't mean you're not affected by the various things that are going on. So I want to be sensitive to that. And before this happened, somebody asked by request how to sort of get back into the swing of things, how to deal with social anxiety or fear of crowds, things like that, after, COVID-19 is lifted. And this is something I'll be open about. I struggle with, I have struggled with, and people are like, what? You did 1 million conventions. Exactly. So, this is something I have some experience overcoming. It is something that is best to ease into. Don't, how do you eat the elephant one bite at a time? It isn't something you should expect to just leap right back into. Start with smaller gatherings and work up. I personally still prefer smaller gatherings when it's something of any more than 5 or 6 people. I find it just becomes, to me, people in the same space as opposed to it being, a cohesive thing, a cohesive conversation, and someone inevitably gets left out. I prefer groups of 3, personally, maybe 4. Just because that gives everybody sort of a turn. Now I do dinner parties of up to 20 people, or I did before COVID, but that's one of those things. Even then, if there are people that are just happy to be around other people and don't need to feel directly involved, like they just like listening to other people and kind of absorbing it, that's awesome. But I don't like the feeling that anybody feels like they don't belong or like their opinions aren't appreciated, so on and so forth. Obviously, figuring out what people you think are going to get along and disagree in a good way instead of disagreeing in a way that can lead to a brawl. There are some people that are good people at their cores, but they're not good in groups. And they have a tendency to say not the smartest things. I had one instance where there are 2 people that I can't have in the same space. And, I still talk to both of them. I consider one more a friend than the other, but that the one person just says really dumb stuff that the other person interprets as racist, and I can't say for certain it's not. And so that it's like, Lana, why are you associating anything with a racist? Well, because I believe that some people can be brought around and they can see sort of the error of their ways. It's not a hateful thing. It's just somebody with weird ideas. But still, I'm not going to subject other people to that stuff. And that's the sort of thing that one of the things I want people to know, because this was a problem before COVID. If something is making you uncomfortable, that has value. That has meaning. Sorry if you're hearing background noise. Speaking of uncomfortable, have the windows open. So if you hear background noise and that's making you uncomfortable because it's more noise than usual, I have my windows open. There may be nothing an event can do about that discomfort. It may just be that it's not the right event for you. Sometimes there is something that can be done. I mean, I can't go to live concerts anymore unless it's a very small venue, like a restaurant or something like that. And even then, because I'm allergic to marijuana. And it was actually, I thought I'd be safe at this one bar show that a friend of a friend was playing at. And we went there and someone was smoking weed out the back with the back door open because it locks behind them. And of course, they didn't want to smoke it out on the street because you can't smoke within, a certain number of feet of the front door. But they, for some odd reason, didn't think that applied to the back door. And so it went right through the place. We mentioned it was a problem. The bar owner just shrugged, or the person we dealt with, the manager. And so we just left. And we felt bad that, the person saw we came, understood why we had to leave. But sometimes leaving is the right call. That doesn't mean it's not it's not an inclusive environment. In that case, they were violating health code. But, for instance, if you're alcohol intolerant, why would you go to a wine tasting, right? If alcohol makes you sick, why would you go to that? I went to, when I was down in Vermont visiting a friend, we went to the Ben & Jerry's factory and toured that. And I thought it was very interesting, but they looked at me like I was insane because one of the things you can take home is like a free, pint of Ben & Jerry's. And they asked me what flavor they wanted. And I said, at the time, they had nothing non-dairy. And I'm like, well, then no. And they said, well, you take one and for your friend. And I'm like, do you want it? No, I'm good with the one. Okay, then I don't want it. And they looked at me like I had a third head. But, I didn't ask for a second head, I guess. I do not have a second head or a third head. But, I didn't ask for any money back or anything because I couldn't partake of that. I understood that touring an ice cream factory, perhaps I would encounter dairy, right? Other things, it's more reasonable, right? If an event is advertised as being, accessible and it is not, that is fair. But it's all about reasonable inclusion, right? And the last thing you want when you're already stressed is to have to fight for, fight with people, even though it's your right sometimes to insist on reasonable accommodation. Sometimes it's just not worth it. And the truth is that to put a sort of more positive spin on it, this is a really good opportunity to learn who your friends really are. Because your real friends will recognize that you're not having a good time of it and go, let's find something else to do. Like, we'll still go to this, but it's not your thing. So let's find something that you can do and you can enjoy too. There was a situation where a very large group of people, I thought they were my friends, but I said, look, this element of these events is making me uncomfortable. Can we please do something else sometimes? And they just stopped inviting me to anything. I determined those people were absolutely not my friends, and they proved me right by some online nastiness after that. And the nice thing about that was I'd already started to extract myself from the situation. So the damage in that was far less. But yeah, it's okay to need stuff sometimes, because that's who you find out who the people are who really care about you. If you never say, look, I got to call time out on this. This is my issue here, without blame, right? Just, I'm having a problem with, not you should have known. No, not that. But if you go like, look, this is how I'm feeling. This is what's going down for me. That gives the people around you a big opportunity to show that you matter to them and that you have value. And it can be a very affirming thing. It can also show you that the people you're associating with are a big waste of your time. The interesting thing about realizing that is it's rough in the short term. As the months turn into years, you realize how many things you didn't get done because you were so busy trying to keep the peace with people who just didn't have your back. And so one of the things you may notice when you get back out into the world is that the things you used to enjoy, the people you used to enjoy being around, don't hold the same joy that they once did, if they ever did, or you realize that you never really enjoyed this, or you don't like it anymore. That's okay. Your perspective has changed. This has been a lot, especially if you're dealing with some of the double, triple whammies that have been going on lately, because it's not, just the fear of a potentially deadly virus, but it's also, realizing that certain people who you used to regard very highly turned into, COVID denying obnoxious assholes. And then you wondered whether they were always an obnoxious asshole and you just didn't see it. I'm speaking from personal experience here. And I know for me, there's obnoxious asshole and then there's obnoxious asshole who's divorced from reality. And some people can be obnoxious assholes on one subject and be totally fine people on other things. But my obnoxious asshole line is when you tell the person, look, this is bothering me. Can you just take it down a peg? And they don't. Done. That's it. Boundary crossed. Onward without this person. This is a skill that takes practice. You feel like you're being horribly selfish at first. You're not, because you don't know, because people don't communicate. It drives me crazy. People don't communicate when they're uncomfortable. They just kind of suck it up or suck it in anyway. And so there'll be this person that was making everybody uncomfortable for a really long time and nobody said anything to me. And this was a management challenge I had quite a bit when I was doing, especially anything charity or anything volunteer. Oh my God. Once somebody became an overt problem, you'd discover all these things that were happening that should have been warning signs had anyone told you. And, for me as a manager, I can't speak to anybody else, but for me as a manager, I want to know the early warning signs, right? Doesn't mean you can necessarily do anything about it right away, but it's very good to know so you can keep an eye on it. And it was so frustrating when people were like, oh yeah, there was this and all this stuff started coming out that, I didn't know about. And, I said, why didn't you tell me? Oh, we didn't want to bother you. Oh, so you let this person just get away with stuff because I didn't know. Great. The other one that's really toxic for social environments that you may be more aware of now that you're seeing things through fresh eyes is the people talking about someone behind their back, but never talking to that person. You may be that person that has happened to. That is a big frustration of mine with fandom groups. People love to gossip. People don't like to solve problems. And it'll be look, have you talked to this person about what they're doing? Well, no, I'm telling you. Well, I've told them, but all I hear is you're the only one with a problem with this because 6 people are coming to me. instead of having one-on-ones with the person you have the problem with. It doesn't help anybody. Because it was true. Like, yeah, this person, yeah, I'm the only one talking about something. And I am not someone who makes a habit of bringing up people who aren't present for a discussion. Discussion should be one-on-one. It's not healthy so you may notice this stuff when you start getting back into group socialization. It may suddenly drive you crazy in a way it never did before. This is not something wrong with you. This is a sign that you have matured, you have grown, you have changed from various experiences. And that's valid and that's good. We don't give enough validity to post-traumatic growth. A lot of people think any change in a person after they've been through a trauma is proof that they're somehow damaged, as opposed to, no, they went through some shit that grew them up or that changed or solidified their priorities. This is who they are now. And that's not damage. That's growth. That's learning and changing as a person. Now, people who don't know what it's like to grow, people who are afraid of growth, people who are afraid of making mistakes, people who are afraid of a lack of certainty, they're not going to do well with that. It's going to be a period of great change for people, not just getting back out into the world, but figuring out what they want now and recognizing that that's not maybe what you wanted before COVID. Now, some people will just be thrilled to go back out, right? There are some things I'm looking forward to doing again. There are some things I'm in absolutely no hurry to do. That's cool. That's okay. Validate your feelings, validate the feelings of others, and be around people who you find validating as well. And that validation does not mean agreement on everything. This was something that came up in comics a few weeks ago, and I thought it was just an utterly brilliant insight. Mature people don't want spaces where everybody's just in agreement. People want environments where people will call somebody on their BS and still be their friend. And I thought that was such a mature distinction. And it's true. People should be able to have heart-to-hearts and check-ins. And are you sure about this? Because that's an indication that somebody has your back, right? They're not just letting you, run headfirst into trouble because, they really don't care that much. They want to be popular. They don't want to be a friend. Now, if somebody is constantly putting your ideas down and constantly demotivating you, instead of going, basically, look, I'll support you if you decide to do this. Have you considered this, this, and this? Big difference, right? Now, in all the noise pre-COVID, in all the, ride sharing, room sharing, work sharing, people's boundaries got very, very, very eroded. And then all of a sudden, people got, I don't like the word isolated, but people had to be by themselves. It's a very important life skill to learn how to be by yourself. And I have a couple friends who it was very hard for them for a while. And I'm very proud of them that they had a really bad time for a while and got through it and learned how to be by themselves. And now I'm noticing that, they're meeting and forming friendships, through Zoom and stuff like that with people in a healthier way. Because they're spending time with those people because they enjoy those people. They're not spending time with people because they can't be alone. And one thing, I mean, I know this, I've been struggling this week. This is the last bit. The sheer amount of emotion that we've been dealing with has been a lot. If you're anything like me, it's left you really, really exhausted. I'm very affected by the emotions of people around me. And all the negativity has been, and let me be clear, negativity is not somebody going through a bad time. That's one thing, right? Negativity is people framing stuff worse than they need to, catastrophizing, and just constant glasses half empty thinking, not smart strategizing, not risk mitigation, constant doom and gloom, or being more gloomy more of the time than less of the time. I need a lot less of that. And I admit it's getting to the point when things start opening up again. I know things are opening up in other places, but here they're still pretty limited. But as people, more, we start hitting that vaccination threshold and people keep going back to, more crowds and stuff like that, I know I'm going to have to take on that excess burden of just being around more people. That means I'm not going to have the spoons to listen to, the crisis of the day, for 20 people in DMs or stuff like that. I'm just not going to have the bandwidth for that. And I have to prepare for that. So, when it does come up and it does sort of have to, okay, time to set some limits, I can do it in a compassionate way and not do it in an overloaded way. So I can minimize feelings of rejection, hurt feelings, stuff like that. It's really important to do that mental preparedness so you can be your most positive self. You can be as compassionate and kind to people as you would like to be treated. There are step-by-steps to kindness and compassion. And, the first that you can't be kind and compassionate to other people if you're constantly overloaded and therefore a raw wound. You'll do one of two things. You'll, have a very strong reaction that other people don't understand, or you'll just displace, you'll disassociate. And so what'll happen, and I've been guilty of this in the past. It's something I realized I have to watch is, someone's going through a bad time. Instead of really connecting with it, you're not sure what to do. So you just start talking about something unrelated because they're not, saying they want to talk about it. So, I know for me, it's like, if I'm not talking about it, it's because I don't want to talk about it. But I had to learn that other people aren't like that. Some people need a bit more prompting because when they've opened up in the past, they've been shamed for it. And I think that's something I hope, because now, and this is a hope, this is not a prediction. There's a big difference between my predictions and the things I hope for. One is what I think is going to happen. One is an opportunity I think probably won't, but it would be nice if it did. I am seeding the clouds, so perhaps now it's more likely to happen now that I'm putting it out there. Now that we have a chance to essentially reboot our social lives, thinking about that, right? Think of it that way. And, what do? What's the first thing that kicks in when, your computer screen pops up, the BIOS pops up, right? It's not instant, boom, Windows or Mac OS. It's the basic stuff. You got to load that BIOS. You got to load the thing that boots the computer before it's, the operating system and then all your various apps and all your files and all the websites and all that stuff. There's a process, right? and one's gotta be stable and functioning before you move on to the next. Now that happens, in about a minute. Or if you've been running Windows 10 a while, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. That was a joke, but a joke based in truth. But, you have the chance to completely reboot your social environments. And it doesn't have to go back to what it was. Maybe it shouldn't. Maybe it's better if it doesn't. Maybe a smaller social circle is something you'd be more happy with. Maybe just a complete change of scenery that way would be better for you. Just a hard reset to get away from, groups are toxic. Yes, you may end up in a completely different type of toxicity, but perhaps you'll identify the warning signs earlier, not get so enmeshed with it, and sort of stay at arm's length where you don't get sucked in. Welcome to my experience with conventions. But some groups are perfectly fine at arm's length, but if you get into like the organization, the planning, the like inner circle, they become incredibly toxic. That is a thing. If you're just an attendee, it's a great time. It's just a shit run event, right? But the only people who really suffer from that are the people volunteering who get abused. That's possible. But you can set a boundary and not be affected by that. Now, if you're like, I don't want to support events that are badly run, fair enough. I'm with you there. But some people just want to go have fun. They don't terribly care. They don't want to get any on them. That's valid too. And this gets back to what I was saying. My hope is maybe part of this rebuilding, this rebooting of our social lives is we can do it better. And part of doing it better is recognizing that there is not one way to approach a problem. There's not one set of needs. There is not one single script, type of code that everybody runs on. And that being more open to the fact that other people approach stuff in a different but equally valid way, if you give people that room, you up your chances for other people to give you that room too. You're more likely to be accepted by a group if you accept other people, you come at people where they are instead of, talking down to them or trying to change them. And I know talking down's a loaded thing in nerd crowds. It's the intent and how other people read it are very different sometimes. You don't have to blame yourself for something to be aware that it makes other people uncomfortable. That's what I'm saying. There's no right or wrong to a lot of this socialization stuff. And I think a lot of anxiety, a lot of deep unhappiness is rooted in the idea that there is a right and wrong way to do certain things. God knows an entire industry of self-help and business advice books has certainly given people that impression. It's not so. There's a bunch of different ways to succeed in things. God, the GDC talks I watched last week, every AAA person, when asked, how did you get into game dev, said, the way I got into game dev probably won't work for you. It's an individual path based on their individual skills. They succeeded by playing to their strengths and being aware of their weaknesses and finding people to work with who backstop their weaknesses as opposed to compounding them, but also help them maximize their strengths, help them do what they were good at to the best of their ability. And that's when you know that you found a group that validates you. When, people will call you on your BS, but they'll also remind you of what you're good at and help you feel good about what you're good at and help you feel good when you do have this weakness, but you're trying to get better at it. Somebody sees you doing better and says, hey, I'm really proud of you. You're really coming a long way here. A lot of people like, that happens? Yes, that can happen. Just maybe not in the group you're in right now. Okay? Hope you found this useful. Hope you found this as a way of looking at this in a positive attitude instead of a terrifying way. There are no wrong answers here. If something feels bad, step away. Help support this channel. If you like this sort of content, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K. This is lower rated, but people really appreciate it. So thanks for watching.